Okay, Nick, today we're going to rank our pizza choices by favorite toppings.
I knew you were going to do something with licorice.
I mean, I just got to say it. It's shockingly my number 4 favorite pizza topping. I don't know. So
here's a confession. I don't know if we can put it. We don't believe that, but usually when we go see the movie in a theater, I always order a pack of licorice. And since with the pandemic I wear a mask and I didn't order anything, this is one of the first movies ever that I did not watch in the movie theater and not have licorice.
That's fair. I was hoping when I was at the theater to see one like a couple, like one with licorice and one with pizza, and just be like,
my wife was like, "Aren't you going to order your standard licorice?" No, I don't want to take my mask off. She's like,
just
with
sneaking,
the title,
just sneaking a little bit.
Like, the title.
All right, so we're going to rank our favorite pizza toppings and talk about Paul Thomas Anderson's newest film, his third film, and maybe his unofficial '70s trilogy, Licorice Pizza. And welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick, and thanks for watching, and thanks for finding us, and feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. There's some great options for Patreon to tell us what to do. Today we're going to talk about what I regard as one of the top 10 best films of 2021, Licorice Pizza.
Perfect. Yeah, Licorice Pizza. So when teenage actor and entrepreneur Gary Valentine falls in love at first sight with Alana Kane during school picture day, he tries to convince the 25-year-old Alana that they will end up together. As the push and pull of their friendship drives them to others, they both learn that the others are not always the right choice.
Okay, any movie that plays almost the entirety of Peace Frog from The Doors is going to get a top 10 for me. If you're going to put that song in the movie, fine. I'm sure your wife is going to agree too.
Well, she would not go with me to this one.
Oh, no. All right.
No, we have trouble during this time of year because things get so stressful at work that she's not always willing to jump into theaters with me again. Licorice Pizza was one that I was hesitant to see because recent Paul Thomas Anderson work has not struck with me as much. I would say that of the 3 most recent Paul Thomas Anderson films, this is my favorite. But in the grand scheme of things, I just didn't really connect with every element. But the soundtrack, I certainly did.
He's one of those, even though I do enjoy his movies, you and I both agree Inherent Vice and He's a Bit of Work, even though Brian Eggert likes it, that the rewatchability is not there. Like, if you see a Paul Thomas movie, like, do you want to go back? Sometimes not really. And that's for me, it's like, I've seen this movie, Licorice Pizza. There's going to be some scenes I really enjoy, but do you really want to go back and be invested for another 2 hours of watching it? Even though it's great, the rewatchability for his movies don't really have it for me.
Yeah, outside of Boogie Nights, there's not one that I frequently go back to. I go to Magnolia every once in a while, but it's still a 3-hour movie. That is like it is a time and a commitment.
So it's a
With
lot of
this
digest.
movie, I like that it's a little bit shorter. It's a little bit more self-contained, but it felt like, we're just coming out of the holiday season, it felt like a charcuterie board. Where like I loved certain parts of it on the board. I liked the meats and the cheeses, but I didn't like that chocolate or the olives. There's so many parts of it that I really, really liked, and if the movie was just those parts, I think I would have liked it more. I wasn't really into the central relationship. I was more interested in the kind of the hangout movie aesthetic that we got like with a film like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, with this film of like hanging out with John Peters or Jack Holden or Walks, who is running for government, like all these different bits and pieces I thought really, really worked well for me. But it was just when you kept interspersing them with a relationship I didn't really care about, and some of the other comedy in the film that felt flat, it was kind of just a mixed bag.
Right, and I think a lot of people are going to be like, it's not an overall comedy, it's not an overall drama, it's right there in the middle of really of a balance where you could go a little bit overboard. We're going to talk about a movie that should have went a little more overboard. But I do think the central, it's a loose structure, right? Paul Thomas always talks about relationships, and they're a big mess, even when they're effective good relationships, like in Times and Fred. That's the benefit for it, even though it's not it doesn't look like a healthy relationship, but it's a benefit for both of them. And I think that's it for this movie. They're and this is my favorite critique word, they're such a contrast. That's probably why I like it so much. They are the complete opposite, and that's probably why he likes her. Yeah, because she'll tell him go fly a kite, and then he's like, no, I really love it. And he's like, you're really soft and gooey. In fact, your name is Valentine, and there's that contrast. But I like it, the evolutionary step that eventually their personalities transfer off to each other. Then eventually he gets a little bit salty. Yep. And she gets a little more sweet.
I think that's kind of how it worked with just even like me and my wife. It's like there's so many things that we're drastically different on, but that's kind of how we work as a support system for each other. And I like that, honestly, it's gonna feel weird that I say I like that they have the age difference. I don't. It kind of makes me feel a little icky still, but I like that like we are instructed going into the movie that like their relationship is not really okay because of like all these different elements, but they're the only two that really fit each other's puzzle piece. You know, like they're the only two that really could exist together because anyone else that they're with is not going to work. And Brian said it better on our top 10 of the year. You check all that on St. Paul Filmcast.
Yeah, check it out.
He said it really like better than I ever could, which is that we're basically presented with this relationship, and then we're presented with all the other options that they have and how they don't work. And that's kind of how it is. PTA presents us with a relationship and then convinces us for 2 hours that no, they're right for each other.
But it's not like a lustful activity. It's like, all right, I'll take the time to grow up a little bit, be 18, 19, and then, like that. I like the contrast of she's a little more immature than he is.
Yeah.
He's a little more 25, and she's a little more 15, even though so she needs a lot of growing up to do, and he needs a little more, enjoyment out of life.
He needs to get a little bit more childish, and like he needs to have that time to grow. But we see this a lot with people who work in the system. We talked about it with the movie Honey Boy last season, that like these people end up in the system of being young and making a lot of really big choices that could affect career paths and money, and kind of just getting swallowed up and having to grow up way too quickly. And she's kind of like, the polar opposite. She's been forced to grow up because age moves on without us.
Yeah, and I think it's an effective work because he said we're going to talk about a 25-year-old dating a 15-year-old. We're like, and it's not really that. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you're going to put that in the log lines, but it's not really that at all.
Well, it's kind of like when we talked about Titan, like the movie where the woman sleeps with the car.
Yeah,
like, that's not what the movie is about.
Challenge for you to write that log line. Yeah. All right, so it stars Alana Haim. This is her first movie. In fact, she's part of a singing group with her sisters.
Yes.
You can watch those music videos. And the funny thing is, the person that edited the music videos edited this movie, Alan Jurgensen. So I don't know how the connection worked about.
And Jurgensen hasn't done a feature to my knowledge.
Yeah.
But I know PTA has directed some of their music videos as well. So like he definitely must have seen something while doing those music videos that he was like, I can mold this with. And I think he said he wrote the role for her. I do agree this is a role that like this is perfectly matched to her acting capabilities. Yeah. This being her first major role, and same with Cooper Hoffman. Neither of them had acted in a sense that an actor plays a character.
And I like that everything she wears doesn't seem to really fit her. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's obviously designed for her, but doesn't really fit her personality until the very end. That fits what she designed to do.
Yeah.
Costuming. So yeah, and her whole family. In fact, my wife and I watched the movie. Like, that is a little too close to being her sister. That has to be.
I saw a video where they were promoting. I didn't know
before we watched the movie.
Yeah, I saw a video that the sisters promoting the movie, and just assumed that they were helping support their sister who was in it, and then I realized like that's the sisters, that's the dad playing her dad. There's a lot of family dynamics at play here, and I do think we don't get a lot of family time in the movie with her, but what we do get feels pretty authentic.
Right, because she's the loud one, she's the harsh one. She seems like presented what we always call like the black sheep in the family, right? Yeah. Get on with your life.
And back to what you said about her being too young for her age, she has those classic teenage girl moments where like she goes home and slams the door and falls on her bed and just gives up for the day. Like we see that in so many of these like teenage movies. Like the teenage kid who just like just everything went wrong today. We see her doing that, and she's in her 20s, like, and she's still like struggling to have that growth.
Cinematography was shared responsibility between PTA, Paul Thomas, and Michael Bauman. This is one of his first movies he did cinematography for. He's a well-accomplished gaffer. He's one of the highest sought-after gaffers for Hollywood for the last over 30 years. And this is an opportunity to work the camera a little bit too, so share a little bit of responsibility. Duel you usually think is going to be really effective, but when I was watching the movie, I was so invested with what's going on. I was like, are they moving the camera? And they actually do it. It's kind of one of those effective cinematography that doesn't really stand out. Yeah,
it's like good visual effects. You don't notice it. And then afterwards, when someone points it out and they point out the magic trick, you can't stop noticing it. But I think more movies should do this, where like you have someone like Paul Thomas Anderson has done his own cinematography before. So it's not a stretch that he could do it here, but for him to grab someone and pull them up the ranks to like, hey, I want you to like be on point with me. It's probably a good teaching experience. It's probably a good like development where PTA can grow by working alongside Bauman can grow working alongside him. I didn't feel that there was a disconnect. There weren't certain shots that didn't look like other shots. And that's why I come down with like saying this movie is very well made. It is a very well made movie.
Yeah.
It just comes down to personal preferences, the things that worked and didn't work. But cinematography is something absolutely worked.
One of the things I think is going to get nominated is set direct decoration and production design, because it is full and it's perfect setting to fill the movie in, including her home and his home and the whole phones and everything. So I expect set design and set decoration as well as maybe costuming getting a nomination for this.
Yep, and that's another thing that kind of has hand in hand with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is they do feel like they were made in the time period. You know, outside of like recognizing some of the faces, they were made in the time period. It's almost like someone uncovered them and was like, we have to bring this out. I was really impressed with the visual aesthetic and just kind of the stuff too, like on set when he's doing that family show and he's like picking up the kids and it's all the kids dancing.
Right, because it's almost like
felt really realistically part of that realm where that could have been a show.
If you notice, there's that ashtray frog that was in the 70s. I know I had a family member that had one of those, but it's an ashtray with a frog with his mouth open, and you set it on the end of the table, and you would just ash in the frog. So the ashtray frog, I saw it, and I was like, oh, and he's like, no, shut up. Also, another director's in this, Benny Safdie.
Yeah, Safdie did Uncut Gems, Good Time, a couple short films too, like Safdie, and he's been doing some acting stuff too.
Playing actually a real person in this movie.
He was in Pieces of a Woman last year as well. So he has done, I'm not sure if he started as an actor and went to director or the other way around, but he's kind of been a support system again for other directors he appreciates, and helping them kind of play a role. And he's good at what he does. He was in Good Time as well, acting. So he's good at what he does in the role.
I forgot about it because Robert Pattinson's in there, so again.
Yeah, he owns it.
But he's actually playing a real character, Noel Wax, who was a politician in the 70s in Hollywood, California. So, it's bringing up to me that it's a whole nostalgia of early California, early 70s California. And you're constantly getting reminded about that. And I think it's a little more, you're getting the trappings of dancing on the nostalgia, but not really going overboard with it.
No, because the nostalgia holds a place in the story. And I would say the most nostalgic thing in the whole movie is the title Licorice Pizza, because you can almost do that coffee talk thing where it's like licorice pizza has neither to do with licorice nor pizza discuss. If you don't connect with that record store, which I didn't, the title is ultimately meaningless because it doesn't hold a lot in the movie.
Right. Paul Thomas Anderson wrote this story based on his best friend Greg Gutzman. And if you look very carefully, he's in the movie, he's in disguise, but this is kind of what Gutzman went through as his childhood. So it's a little bit inspired by events of what he had to go through too. So he's in the movie, so it's original screenplay. Isn't it? I think he'd done the screenplay himself based on his conversations. I'd probably get a nomination too because it's original screenplay. But it's based on his best friend Greg Gutzman.
Yep, and so Gutzman appears in the film. We also have a lot of other it's funny to me the people he chose not to rename and the ones he chose to rename, because Bradley Cooper, of course, plays John Peters, who is infamous. If you ever watched An Evening with Kevin Smith or went into Kevin Smith's Superman Lives problems with the giant metal spider, we all know John Peters, and that's why Bradley Cooper's performance in this film is my favorite performance in the movie. And I think honestly, even though I really liked his work in Nightmare Alley, I prefer his performance in this because he's just so unhinged, and yet I buy that he's John Peters. He chose to leave his name as John Peters. In fact, he approached John Peters and told him, I'm basing a character on you, and got his blessing. But then you also have, Sean Penn, who plays Jack Holden, which is basically a retrofit for William Holden.
Right, yeah, from Network. We critique Network, yeah.
And then Christine Ebersol, who is playing Lucy Doolittle, who is supposed to be a change for Lucille Ball. So it's interesting to know, the characters that he didn't want to, be real people versus the one that he wanted to lampoon. And maybe that's kind of a comparison, again, going back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The choice to have a character playing Bruce Lee meant that any joke you make, people are going to react to. Whereas John Peters, maybe he felt John Peters could be a punching bag. I don't know.
Well, John Peters he's a big macho. Everything that John Peters thinks he is, he's putting in the movie.
And he did say in the interview with Peters that Peters told him, well, I wouldn't actually hurt Gary in the movie, but I would hit on Alana. He said that, and so that's why they actually wrote the hitting on Alana into the screenplay for it. And it's John Peters is that kind of guy who's just here's a grave, let me start digging.
He puts his foot in his mouth, right? Yeah. So Jack Holden, and it's got to be an interesting audition to tell Sean Penn, I want you to play this William Holden character because you smoked enough cigarettes as he has. You almost have enough wrinkles as he has as the age right then and there. So you fit perfect for playing William Holden in this movie. Tom Waits is in this movie too. I forgot about this. But he's You do enough movies, you can pepper him in at the right spot. He like Seven Psychopaths.
Yep, Seven Psychopaths. I also think of him in like The Ballad of Buster Scruggs and like these movies where he just like pops in, says his lines, and disappears. And it's kind of funny because I don't want to say he's forgettable in the movie, but because he shares his sequence with a much more bombastic Sean Penn role. I mean, the role was written more bombastic, so you remember the Sean Penn. But it kind of makes it so that if you revisit movies that have Tom Waits in it, you're like, oh, he is in this, even though you've seen it 10 times. You kind of just, he comes in, gives his role, and he does it well, and he leaves.
And then she gets locked into the table.
Yep.
Alana gets locked into the table and listens to these old men talk about the old days. It's going to be irritating, and she's trying to like pay attention to me, and they don't really care. You're just an accessory, right?
Yep, and I do like that comparison that every person she comes into contact with that could be a meaningful, like, professional or emotional relationship is an utter disaster.
No other movie fits waterbed as part of a prop in a movie ever since Edward Scissorhands. This is waterbed contains an important role into this movie.
I haven't seen a waterbed used in a non-genre way until this movie, because I was thinking about Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Oh, I was thinking like Edward Scissorhands
there,
right? Yeah.
And then like the way that they touch upon it in The Conjuring 3 last year by having the ghost in the waterbed. Like they do it in genre films all the time. I don't think I've ever actually seen a waterbed appear in a movie that's not genre. So that surprised me. And then of course our waterbed salesman is Leo DiCaprio's father. Leo was reportedly in talks to be in this movie, but PTA said that never actually occurred. Like they were never looking at him.
You know how things works. Everybody starts throwing names out.
Yeah, but it's fun to see George DiCaprio selling a waterbed, and then like I saw his name at the end, I was like, that can't be related.
It is. It is. So yeah, I would definitely say nominations for that, for production, a lot of technical stuff and costuming. It's not a very tight story. It's very loose, like small vignettes, almost dancing around what we could do with David Lynch above with Mulholland Drive, little sequent little events. We're going to talk about, we haven't talked about the famous event that we're going to take time doing this movie. She actually drives this truck backwards.
Yeah.
And she
actually did it.
Yeah, she actually did. She took truck training to do this. And I love the part when she's like, back out the way. I love that take of, get out of my way, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So it shows, well, out the whole movie, she didn't really have a lot of talent. This is her one little talent.
Yeah, and look at how it's used one time. And like, but it's funny that again that comes down to my favorite sequence. I think the John Peters stuff is great, and then like trying to evade him but keep running into him is fantastic. Like if that had been the entire 2-hour movie, I'd have been like, being hunted by this Hollywood producer. That just worked so well.
Why didn't they take out the scene that was in the trailer of him smashing side mirrors?
We talked about that on St. Paul Filmcast as well, where it's like the most iconic shot in the whole film, and it shows up in the credits. And I just wanted to know, where was that going to be used? And again, like when you've got like such perfection in supporting players, I'm curious why they cut it, because PTA is not against making a long frickin' movie. I mean, Magnolia comes in close to 3 hours. Boogie Nights is 2.5. I mean, we got another 3 hour There Will Be Blood. Like he's not opposed to it. So this movie runs 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is kind of I think it's maybe the shortest movie. I don't know.
So he had time. It's just weird. Maybe he couldn't find the fight fitting for it to make it ultra comedy.
Because this movie doesn't really have a storyline per se. It's got an emotional through line, but not really like a plot. I find that they probably got a lot of B-roll. They probably got a lot of like footage, like any good documentarian. They just took a bunch of video, and then I'm sure that the guys thought that was funny for the trailer, and he was like, that was kind of more of a, like, we didn't know what to do with it.
So once again, this is one of those movies I would say, be ready for what you're getting into. It's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. He has almost a genre by himself, almost like Wes Anderson does. And just prepared that this is kind of what he does. A little bit of not too much comedy, not too much drama, just kind of try and almost dance on that Lubitsch touch that he's trying to achieve a little bit.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think the movie is full of great performances.
It is. We don't even talk about Cooper. What's his name?
Cooper Hoffman, who again, talking about related to people, the son of Philip Seymour Hoffman, who had worked with PTA before on several other films, rest in peace, and being able to, he wasn't interested in acting, but PTA had written the role for him, approached him, convinced him to take it, and he plays it really well. The movie is full of that kind of stuff, and I think those two leading performances are better because the role was written for them, because he had experience working with them. Yeah. Maybe these two might not have a future as like multifaceted characters or performers, but they fit well in the roles that they're here. I wouldn't be surprised seeing awards discussion for them as well. But then they're also aided by some truly strong veteran actors that are coming in to just pump up the volume the entire last half of the movie. Yeah. I really enjoyed bits and pieces of it, and overall I'm giving it a positive recommendation. I'm just not as gaga as a lot of other people are, but I really did like the movie overall.
I'm going to just pour over it because I'm a product of the 70s. So anything you put in the 70s, including music, I'm just going to melt all over it.
That's fair.
So
that's fair.
Right.
And it is one of those, like, you know, I think nostalgia can play a healthy role in if it's not part of the main plot. I mean, it really isn't part of the plot.
But that's a
it's
difficult
part of the
shot
setting.
to do. Get all those retro cars and then follow them in the street all the way to the gas station. I mean, that's got to take days to set up.
Well, and even then going to that shot they cut of him bashing the windows, that's got to be a lot of money that you just spent bashing those windows. So it is, yeah, like putting together those elements and making an authentic, especially a Hollywood or LA style 70s movie is expensive. Like, it is work. It is. And so I like those rare moments when we get to see the vastness of what he put to film, because that is a tough thing to do. Especially, I don't know how much of this was shot during the shutdowns and stuff, but that would have been hard work as well. And I think he pulls off a really interesting film that I think the collection of stuff doesn't work as well for me as the individual parts. I will not forget many of the individual parts of this movie. I just didn't feel that connection that I was really hoping for, because Boogie Nights is one of my favorite movies to go back to.
And that has speed to it, even though it's long. It has boom, 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 and then that zoom-in camera that Paul Thomas usually uses, but he didn't use that action that he uses on, like, Burt Reynolds in that movie.
Yeah, he gets a lot more turnstile action than he does specific, like, I would say, like, action-y movement action on his camera, and he is more restrained, and, you know, maybe that just comes out of, like, movies he wants to make, and people obviously like them.
Yeah, there's a little more film techniques from Phantom Thread poured into this movie.
Yeah, it's a softer direction, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of running. For God's sakes, Cooper, running.
I mean, PTA didn't have to run.
Right, yeah.
He's probably sitting on a dolly.
Yeah. I saw enough running. I'm 45, and I'm like, there's way too much running.
At the end of the movie, you're like, oh, man.
Right.
Yes,
So.
I think we both enjoyed the movie. One of us a little bit more than the other one, but I think if you are a fan of PTA's previous movies,
and
this is one to check out. Yeah. If you like any of the other films that he's done in recent memory, I think this is a departure from his early work, but I do think that it is a solid enough movie to get a recommendation from me.
Being a little slice of how radio was back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. So, have you seen Licorice Pizza? Have you eaten Licorice Pizza? Let us know about that too down in the comments. What's your favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film, and what's your least favorite? Is he a director that works for you, one that doesn't? And what do you want to see him do next? Let us know in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you never miss an episode of Kyle and Nick on Film, because who doesn't want more episodes of Kyle and Nick on Film? I know I do. So,
hey, if you want us to critique more PTA, you can join Patreon and tell us what to do.
Perfect, yeah. Check out the Patreon link down in the description there. You can join other patrons like Brian Eggert, who get to help have a bit more of a decision in the films that we cover on a regular basis. That's all we got for you guys. My name's Kyle Goethe. You can find all my film reviews on GoFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and I got rid of my waterbed.